Hello and welcome to the next Lukozer retro game review video, and for this one it is entirely predictable, and after doing the three Lotus games I'm sure you all knew this was coming. So this is Jaguar XJ220, which was released by Core Designs in 1992. Yeah, I think it was. And this game is basically all about a developer's attempt to cash in on the popularity of the Lotus games. And they did it quite literally. And this seems very fucking loud to me. That's why I had the fucking headphones up really loud. Right. Well, let's just get on with it. So we have the practice, copy protection, and that takes us to the main menu. So it does all look rather familiar. Now, for some reason, it decides that the first thing you type in your name is actually your first initial. So in this, I am Lukozer. There we go. Alright, so right, that's all the settings that I need. Joystick automatic gears and the joystick forward for accelerate. This one here is the sensitivity rating if you're using the mouse controller. Wasn't that long ago that I said about if a racing game gives you the option to use the mouse, you should use it because it's the best option. It didn't take me very long to find the exception to that. Don't bother playing this with mouse, for fuck's sake. So the other options are the save game, create a new track, save your new track or load previously made tracks, and 1 or 2 player mode. All looks very familiar. Anyway, now time to load up the tracks, but before we do that we get to choose our music by using a CD player. This looks rather familiar as well, doesn't it? So it doesn't actually play straight away. You have to press play on the CD player, and then it will eventually load up and start playing the music. There we go. And then you very quickly think, fuck it, I'm going to have the sound effects and not the music. So you press eject on there, and it finally starts to load the track. Except of course it doesn't. It first of all starts loading up a graphic of where you are in the game. So you are racing all around the world. There are 3 tracks per country. So you start in England, and all 3 of these tracks are fairly straightforward. They also take quite a long time to load. Stupidly long time. So I am playing this on an Amiga 500 with Kickstart 1.3. If you play this on Amiga 1200, the game plays stupidly fast. It's one of those games that was affected, and yeah, it just played far too fast and you couldn't control it or anything. So anyway, here we are. So we've just been told to start the engine, and now we wait for the flag to come down. So just like the first Lotus game, you start off in 20th place. You want to go as far up the running order as possible. The cars don't weave around as much as they do in the Lotus games. That does not mean that they don't weave around at all though. You can quite clearly see this cunt in front of me was weaving around all over the place until we started approaching the corner. So yes, so it's not weaving quite so much, but the weaving is still there. You may also have noticed that the graphic style is rather similar to the Lotus games. Except the cars aren't generic cars, they do look like actual supercars of the time. So as well as the XJ220, there is the Ferrari there, I forget which one, there's a Lamborghini Countach, there's a Bugatti, I can't remember which one it is. There's a Corvette, as if a fucking Corvette was ever going to be considered a fucking supercar. And I think there's another one, it's a Porsche of some kind, Porsche 998 or something. So, yeah, there are plenty of variety of cars. You do also have a teammate, because as well as the Drivers' Championship, there's also a Constructors' Championship. And each constructor has two cars entered. So up to 8th. I've never been able to win a race. I usually finish either 2nd or 3rd, but I've never won. The game's not a breeze by any chance, but it's not the most challenging of titles. That's what I say to that. So we're up to 3rd, but we're now going to drop a load of places because I slowed to a fucking crawl. So if you look on the display here, we can see that, well, certainly clearly see that we are in 6th place, but that lap 3 is very misleading. That's actually laps to go, and it also includes the lap you are on, so now there's 2 laps to go. They are the clearest things on the entire head-up display. If you look in the bottom right where it says 210 and we'll be dropping down eventually, no, it's still saying 210. That pathetically small display there is your speedo. That's as clear as your speedo gets. And then in the bottom left, you have, well, you see where the 5 is, that's telling you what gear you are in, and the red bar is the revs. The gear above it, or rather the red bar above it, the thinner one, that's your fuel gauge, which is almost totally superfluous because of all the tracks in the entire game. I think there's 1, maybe 2, where you do need to, or will need to refuel. To refuel, you do exactly the same thing as you do in the first Lotus game, shock horror. So you just pull over into the pits and watch the refueling bar go up. And the reason that that was done is utterly laughable. It was actually Jaguar's insistence that the car be given a large enough fuel tank to do most of the races without refueling. And the reason for that is that, and this is absolutely genuine, the reason for that is that they didn't want sales of the XJ220 to be affected by it having a small fuel tank in this game. Because, you know, quite rightly, they thought that people would go out and buy a Jaguar XJ220, a £1 million car, based on how well it did in this fucking game. As much as I like Jaguar, sometimes they don't come out with an unbelievable amount of fucking bollocks. So, as is so often the case, I'm in 2nd, but the first place car is fucking way down he's in another fucking time zone compared to me. So 2nd is almost certainly where I'm going to finish. But let's cut to the chase. You are, you know, if you're not familiar with the game, let's face it, a lot of people are familiar with this game. If they had an Amiga back in the day, you are sitting here thinking, Well, that doesn't half look a lot like the fucking Lotus games. Yes, of course it does, because it is a quite shameless cash-in on the popularity of the Lotus games. So here we are then with the podium scene, and it comes up with the race results. Doesn't tell you how far ahead or behind anyone was, it just shows you the positions. So I got 20 points for finishing second. So the championship, well, there's only been one race, so we know where everyone is, exactly the same as they were in the actual race. And then the constructors' points. Jaguar at first, purely because my second driver got 10 points, whereas with the Porsche, it was like their first driver who won it, and their second driver got fuck all nowhere. Now we come to the next part of the game, which is between each race you get this. Now on first viewing you would think, right, a chance to buy upgrades for the car. No, it isn't. What it is repairing damage to your car. There are no upgrades anywhere in the game. So we now, okay, so that isn't massively damaged, but it is damaged, so I'll repair that. And that's it. These things here just give you different views, but that is all they do. So they are ultimately completely superfluous. So now that I've repaired all my damage, we can now piss off and go on to the next race. It always prompts you to save after every race. Now prompting you to save is a useful feature, but have it after, say, every 3 races when you're about to move on to the next country, not after every single fucking race, for fuck's sake. So I'm not going to bother saving. And I'm not putting in any fucking music, so we'll stick to the sound effects. I think the music in this game is staggeringly mediocre. It's not even close to being as good as the music in Lotus, which is something you'll hear quite often when it comes to this game. So track 2, there's heavy fog making driving hazardous. Does that sound familiar to Lotus players? It fucking well should. So we'll wait for this one to load up. And yeah, sometime today would be nice. I thought there was a little dribble left. Oh fucking come on! This second track almost looks like it's in the shape of France. So it's a completely made up track. None of these are genuine tracks or anything. So here we are then. Start the engine. Doesn't this fog routine look familiar? Well, there's a fucking good reason for why it looks familiar. It's not similar to the Lotus fog routine. It is the same one. The lead developer of this game, I can't remember his name at the moment, but in an interview he admitted that that is exactly what they did. They took the fog routine from the Lotus game and just slapped it straight into their own. So yes, it's not that it looks similar. It is the same fucking one. Which I think is fucking outrageous. How the fuck were they able to get away with that? So it means that obviously the fog routine is every bit as good as it is in the Lotus games, because it is the fog routine from the Lotus games, which is I just think is fucking out of order. But in every other way, this game is desperately trying to cash in on the popularity of the Lotus titles and fails miserably. in every department it is inferior. Graphically it's nowhere near as good as Lotus. I mean, look at your car here, your XJ220. If you've seen an XJ220 for real, you'll know that the car's fucking enormous. In this, it looks like it's been in a crusher or something. It's just all squashed up. It's far too fucking small. So it's the wrong fucking size. It's borderline the wrong fucking shape. So yeah, graphically the game is fucking, yeah, really not much cop. I am not impressed, to put it mildly. In terms of audio, like I say, the music is staggeringly mediocre all the way through, but I mean, listen to these fucking sound effects. The engine sound on your Jag, which is the only engine sound you hear, the other cars are all absolutely silent. It reminds me of the engine sound of your car in the Commodore 64 version of Chase HQ. Now, when a driving game for an Amiga reminds you of the Commodore 64 version of Chase HQ in any way, you know that there is something seriously wrong with it. So, yes, in terms of audio, this game is fucking bollocks. The tyre squeal is awful, and the sound of, you know, the collisions, which is the same whether you hit a car or a roadside obstacle, it's just fucking pants is what it is. And then we come to the gameplay. I mean, alright, the gameplay, yes, it plays like the Lotus Turbo Challenge games. No surprise, but it plays like what it is, a pale imitation of the Lotus Turbo Challenge games. So we are on the final lap now. And the only thing that this has over the Lotus titles is the fact that the other cars don't weave around as much as they do in the Lotus games, but they do still weave about, so it still has that annoyance, and it does leave you thinking, why are they weaving around like that? The only game series I played where that happens is the Lotus games, but this is supposed to be a completely different game. So it is as if they have tried to make it as similar to the Lotus games as they could get away with. So much so that they have, in some areas, just lifted the code straight from the Lotus games and stuck it in here. Looks like I'm going to be lucky if I finish fucking 7th. So, well, I am in 7th, but I'm pretty sure that's where I'm going to finish. I don't see me getting up into, well, I won't even get into the top 6, let alone the fucking top 3. I think this, okay, I thought that was the final straight. Well, fucking what? So I finished 4th by the looks of it. Well, that came from fucking nowhere. So again, the same fucking podium screen, but everyone's, they just changed the overalls. So of course I'm not on there because I only finished 4th. So I'm now down to third in the championship, and we're now second in the constructors. Oh well, what a shame. So I think we're now heading back to the repair screen, see what needs doing. It's just going to be the bodywork again. So yeah, that could do with being fixed. Right, that's done. Rear spoiler's fine, that needs a bit. Fix that. That looks okay. And that's it. Right, there you go. So that's repairs done. Let's piss off. And I don't want to fucking save. Or change with fucking music. So let's get on with the review, even though I have pretty much covered most of the aspects. The presentation is okay, I suppose, and it's about the only area of the game that is original. So yeah, presentation's fine. Graphics, again, screens like this, and although I think the repair screen is a fucking waste of time, the graphics there are fine. In fact, the graphics everywhere are fine until you're actually playing the game itself. But while racing, all of the graphics throughout the race are all just absolutely fucking shite. Audio, I think the music is staggeringly mediocre all the way through. There's nothing that, you know, really grabs me as far as music goes. And the speech, there isn't a great deal of it. It's okay, I suppose, but it's no better or worse than the speech in Lotus 2. So now we're in the wet race. The rain and the wet handling and that, I can tell you, it's purely graphical. It doesn't change anything as far as how your car handles. Well, I was doing okay, but you'll see another part fairly soon which looks awfully familiar to those of you who played any of the Lotus games. There we go, driving through the river. Doesn't slow you down though. So anyway, yeah, so the graphics in the within the race itself, I think, are fucking horrible. I mean, when you consider that the game is called Jaguar XJ220, you would think that the car you're driving would actually look like an XJ220, but no. It looks like a Micro Machines version of an XJ220. And then of course there is the fucking out of order thing about the number of aspects of this game which have just been lifted straight from the Lotus titles. Now admittedly the rain sequence here is slightly different to the rain in the Lotus games. The rain looks heavier, but it doesn't completely obscure your vision, so you can still see where you're going and all that. So I suppose that's okay. Fuck off. But then you get, like, you know, how unbelievably cheap and shitty the speedo has been done. Just, you know, that tiny readout in the bottom right, which means that if my camera has been placed too high, you can't see it at all in this video. But that's how small it is. It's just a fucking 3-digit display. It's pathetic. The fuel bar, which is there for every race, but is absolutely fucking pointless, because you will most certainly never need to worry about fuel at all. So the only thing that is even semi-okay is the rev bar and the with the display telling you what gear you're in. But even that is pretty fucking, you know, basic. So basically, Core Designs have tried to cash in on the popularity of the Lotus titles by bringing out a game that is clearly just an El Cheapo fucking cash-in attempt that is nowhere near as good as the Lotus titles that it's basically trying to rip off. It is not even it's not even on the same fucking planet as the Lotus games. They are far superior to this, and indeed just about every review, professional or otherwise, will tell you that. I've only ever seen one review, or read one review, where the reviewer said that this is better than the Lotus games. And what's really ridiculous is that in that review, they were saying that this is actually better than all three of the Lotus games. So, you know, the only conclusion you can draw from that is that the reviewer is a fucking brain dead cunt who doesn't know the first fucking thing about what he's doing. But then you'd be spot on, because yeah, it was John Gage. That fucking says it all. And the frustrating thing is that this is not a shit game, but it's nowhere near as good as the Lotus games, and clearly what they have done is design it so that people who like the Lotus games will want this on the grounds that this is supposedly better, and it isn't. Not only is it not better, it's nowhere near as good. So, I mean, yes, it is a decent game. Well, it's a reasonable game, but they've been so cynical in their, you know, oh, we're going to make it, you know, much better than the Lotus, you know, 1, 2 or 3. And all the Lotus fans are going to think this is fucking fantastic. Well, for one thing, if you want it to be better than the Lotus games, then why don't you try, you know, creating your own routines instead of lifting them straight from the Lotus games that you are trying to, you know, be better than. There is absolutely no sign of the first place cars. I'm in second place, as I say, that's where I usually end up. All the other cars are fucking way behind me, but the first place car is just absolutely nowhere to be seen. So how do I rate it? Well, like I say, it's not a bad, you know, it's not a terrible racing game, but it is nowhere near as good as, you know, Core seem to want us to think it is. It's a very mediocre arcade driving game. I mean, it's not, you know, absolute shite. It's not, you know, it's not Crazy Cars or Crazy Cars 2 or, you know, Outrun or any, you know, it's nothing like as shit as those. But yeah, that's as far as I can go with the positives. There's just nothing here to keep you playing, and like I said, it almost goes without saying that anybody who bought this back in the day already had well, either Lotus 1, 2 and or 3. I think Lotus 3 came out the same year this was released. So they could well have, you know, bought this, played it once, and then never played it again because it's just inferior to the Lotus games in every department. So I score it 5 out of 10. I say it's not an awful driving game, but it's not one of the best, and you know, it's trying to beat the Lotus games, and it doesn't even get close. Which means that normally I'd say, well, it's still okay, and I would rate it 6, 6.5, maybe even 7. But because of the cynical way they've gone about it, and the fact that they blatantly took aspects of the Lotus games and put it in this, yeah, it just gets marked down. So that is Jaguar XJ220 for Commodore Amiga. 5 out of 10. To be honest, I think I've been a bit generous there, but yeah, well, there you go. So that brings this review to an end, and we will see you in the next one.